Hey everyone, it's Stephanie again, and you are tuned into the review of Married at First Sight, Season 10, Episode 5, I believe. Okay, so let's just jump into it because there's so much to talk about. All right, so last night's episode was a little bit of the honeymoon. We got to see the couples wake up together, spend their first, I don't know at this point, I guess first full day maybe, together and get more comfortable, interact. They're all at the same space in Panama, same hotel. So they get to spend some girl time, guy time, and couples time. So let's just jump in because I just can't help myself. All right. So Michael and Meka. Michael and Meka are not in any better of a space than they were at the end of last week's episode. So just for a refresher, Meka's basically saying that Michael is showing up completely different on camera and gave her a timeline for sex on the honeymoon. Otherwise, he's not into it. Michael's not saying that he said that. To me, he didn't do like a strong denial of it. Something is very off with them. So they end up sleeping in separate rooms. They wake up, they pretty much have a separate day together. I think not until the next day did they finally have a conversation. But it was really awkward to watch them and kind of sad because you could tell she was really wanting something different. Michael is a little bit more calculated in the way that he presents. So he's saying the right things, but I'm not necessarily getting that energetically from him. I'm just like, okay, that sounds good. But they end up, all the couples go to the pool. And Meka comes by herself, and then later on Michael comes by himself, and the elephant is like so large. Like no one can see each other because this elephant is so large, and they don't really get into it in front of them. And it's kind of uncomfortable for them. They eventually, Meka calls Pastor Cal, and Pastor Cal does a great job of what he's supposed to do. When you are counseling any couple or any half of a couple and they are in a space that isn't so great, it's not the best to completely validate any emotions that they may be having in a way that could trigger them to kind of spin out of control. So your emotions are valid, but I'm not gonna respond in a way that could trigger you to continue to spin out. Like my goal here is to help you get centered, help you process, and help you see things maybe in a different way, or give you a new perspective, or give you, unless it's completely like out of line stuff, like, you know, we know what the deal breakers are. My goal is to help you kind of remain in a place where you don't do anything to make things worse. So I think that's what he did. You know, he basically says, I'm hard on the guys, like that's a concern for me, so I'm definitely gonna call him, but this is not what I've seen. Kind of like sit tight, try to have fun. I know this is not that great, but let's kind of see where we're going with this rather than calling it quits at the very beginning because it's just not what you think it is. Michael had the same conversation with Pastor Cal, or same topic anyways. I don't know. For some reason, there's just something about Michael that is not vibing with me. I don't know what it is. I don't like that he did not wear his ring. I think that that is symbolic of a lot of things. I think that's symbolic of quitting very easily. His rationale for it doesn't work for me because married couples, all you married couples, think about how many times you have been so pissed off and the sight of your ring like triggers you even more. Like you don't even want to put it on. You're like, ugh, I don't want to put this on right now. But you put it on because you committed. This is what this is. It's about a commitment. The commitment lasts longer than the good emotions that you felt when you made the commitment. That's what true commitment is. It's not committing to something when something feels good. It's committing to it beyond that, long after those euphoric, exciting, loving emotions were associated with making that commitment. Long after they're gone, or when you're not in a space where you're feeling it, you are still committed. So to me, his justification for not having his ring on was crap, because that's not what marriage is. You are still, and I love that Derek was like, you're still legally married. Hello, you are still legally married. Regardless of you failing as a husband in your eyes, you are still a husband, technically. You should still be wearing that ring. And it put her in a position to feel, well, if he's not committed, she didn't say that. She was basically like, okay, when he wears his ring, I'll wear mine. But she felt away because, hey, you're not really wearing your ring. And although I feel kind of despondent in kind of what's going on, I'm still wearing my ring. I'm still showing up as someone who is committed to somebody else in the world. That's what the ring shows, that commitment. So his validation to me just shows how quickly he abandoned ship, and he'll validate it. But that's unacceptable, because then there would be a lot of married people, which I know there are probably a lot of married people not wearing their rings, but there would be, if we took off our rings every single time we felt a way about our spouse, there would be no ring line, okay? Because you'd probably feel the need to take it off every more often than not, okay? That's not what it's about. So I really didn't like that he handled it that way. On the flip side, I did not like that she told the girls exactly what was happening. It was funny how they did his clip and then hers, because he kept it very like surface and this is what's going on, and his rationale is, hey, I don't really want to put our business out, we need to talk to each other, which I agree with. And she's like, so, you know, and she tells the girls, and they respond the way that we all know that they will respond, except for Taylor, which I love. She showed maturity in saying, listen, so based on this, we're not really feeling Michael right now, but we want you to have a happy marriage. So it's important for you to know that when you're sharing things with family or friends, that sometimes you don't, because the only person who is in love with your spouse is you. And so long after those things occur, or that argument occurred, especially if you're always feeding negative anecdotes about your spouse, but you're not really following up with the positive, then people are only going to have a negative perspective. And when you've moved on, they haven't moved on, because they don't get to experience the wholeness of your spouse like you do. So you have to be really careful. There are very few people, there should be very few people that you're really, really sharing personal things with. Now, yeah, you'll have your girlfriends where if you get into some petty argument, you talk about it, but you have to be careful, because everybody is not equipped to advise you, and everybody is not equipped and mature enough to see your spouse, you know, in a way that is the fullness of what you need in your life, rather than, oh, that's just so-and-so. They need to see him, that's so-and-so, and they need to desire to build a relationship with him or her, not like to the extent that you have one, not to the extent that they're besties, but to the extent that they respect this person as more than an extension of you. And so they're supporting the unit, not necessarily you, which means if you're acting up, they will tell you, like, stop acting up. This is your fault, or you need to look at it this way. You want people who support your marriage, like the marriage, the unit, not just you, even though, yes, they might be an extension of you. So you have to be careful, because if your girlfriend's here too much, or if your family hears too much, or if your guy friends hear too much, they're just going to look at your spouse in a negative way. So Meka needs to learn that, because she is quick to explain too much so quickly, and they're so new. So they don't even have a history where anybody knows anything else about them. So I would urge her and anybody who's finding themselves in that predicament to just be careful about how you express what's going on with your spouse, and be careful who you express. Make sure it's the right source. Make sure it's someone who's unbiased, someone who's mature enough to really support the unit and give you the feedback that you need. Not just love on you, even though that's so great, but it's not enough, okay? So they eventually have a conversation where she says, I basically want to be friends. And you know, we can build up to this marriage from that point. And you can see kind of Michael almost pushing back a little bit, saying, well, you know, we don't want to just be friends, to the point where now we can't really get out of that mode. So he is really fixated, which I understand, and I get that. He's really fixated on getting to the next level and being a married couple. But I also feel like, based on what we've seen, there's a lot of people, because I've read your comments where it's like, oh, this isn't true, this didn't really happen. Based on what I've seen, because I haven't seen anything else, that fixation of moving to the next level is going to trigger her to continue to shut down, because that's kind of what started this whole thing, where it's like, okay, well, we need to, based on what we've seen, do XYZ by this time, and so on and so forth. But To be honest, I don't even see why Michael and Miko are matched. I don't know. Like, this season's matches to me kind of suck, for a lack for a lack of a better word. They just, with Mindy and Zach, and I'll just move on to them. So that's Michael and Mika. I don't have high hopes for them, but we'll see. Mindy and Zach, it's like, Zach likes fitness. She's a figure skater. She's into fitness. Let's go. No, they really did her a disservice by giving her someone who is not into her. He has said, we've seen on camera that she has confirmed that he is not really attracted to her, and he's building this stuff. And most of last night's episode, I was like, Zach, what are you saying? What are you talking about right now? Like, I don't know if you guys felt the same way, but like, Zach speaks in circles. Like, as I was watching, because now I watched it once by myself, and then because my husband was on a conference call, and so he circles back, and I kind of like peek in as he's watching so we could talk about it. But I'm kind of like, Zach seems to me date, like, if I had to like say what I thought about Zach's past, it would be that he dated women who maybe were not as intelligent, and I'm like literally making all this stuff up, but my vibe is that he dated women who maybe on the surface presented better, but maybe were not as intelligent, and so he could use these little anecdotes that he's saying and speak in circles, and they would be like in awe by that, like, oh yeah, sure, that's like, totally get it. I don't know what Zach was saying last night. Like, to me, he was speaking, like, for the most part unintelligibly, because I don't think he really was buying what he was saying. I think he was trying to convince himself in convincing her. He's not attracted to her. No surprise there. I never thought he was attracted to her. I guess that's why I even missed when he said, oh, she has dark hair and dark features, she's beautiful. I missed that because I knew he wasn't going to be attracted to her based on the way that they presented his character on the show, and what he said. And his recurring theme is that he dated women who are very attractive but didn't have anything else, and he wanted someone in between, which is totally understandable. I think they took it a little too far left. I feel like that's not really his type. Yes, she's intelligent and she's funny and everything. She's not his type. And like I said, you don't have to be matched on this show. They don't have to match you exactly with your type. Like, I think someone had said, okay, well, Jessica wanted dark hair and dark features. Why'd they match her with Austin? Okay. Like, you're not going to get exactly your type. But as we'll talk about later, Jessica thinks he fits every box. So he's not so far off where it's like, okay, why would they put them together? To me, Mindy is far off from what he has experienced and what he wants. He wants someone who stimulates him both physically and intellectually. And I just don't see it. Even the conversation where she's basically, there's a lot of like ownership that she has to take. There's a lot of responsibility that she has to take that I do not like. It's like her responsibility to be open enough to trigger him to be open. And it's like, and she kept saying, and you see her overthinking it because she's just trying so hard okay, I have to be vulnerable enough to help you be vulnerable because you kind of are shut down emotionally. Like, enough. You came on this show and you decided to participate in this experiment. It is your job to push yourself. Yes, somebody else's vulnerability can help stimulate your own. It is not her responsibility to make you vulnerable. He doesn't want to be vulnerable because he's not attracted to her. And so that's why he is skating in circles, pun intended, trying to be like, open to building a attraction to her. It's not that deep. It is really not that deep. You can meet someone that you're immediately physically attracted to and you can't stand. Or you can meet someone that you're not really attracted to, but you guys have such a great vibe that you naturally build that. There isn't this much of a roller coaster of conversation to help even bridge that gap of like making that point. So I feel bad because I don't think they did her a service. I really don't. And, she's happy with him. Physically, obviously, and he's not happy with her. He's trying, it's kind of awkward towards the end of the episode. It gets a little more decent, but I mean, the bar is low here. And Zach is just, I just feel like they really didn't, do the best thing. She even has to call him out and say, listen, do you think that you're just attractive and like everyone's going to be attracted to you and I don't have to build that up? And he walks around in circles and he says, no, of course I don't think I'm attracted to everyone. Guaranteed he thinks he's attracted to almost everyone or most people. Like, he's not even thinking that he couldn't be attracted to her. And when he calls her, when she calls him on the carpet, like, do you think that I don't have to build something? Then he's like, no, but I don't even believe it when he says no. And she is even lying to herself and saying, well, it's not just about the physical. I have to build an attraction to you. What I think she's doing is building like this wall to kind of save a little face, because we know she's attracted to him. She said it a bunch of times. She hasn't started acting differently until she has realized that he is not really attracted to her. So now she's kind of like, well, his looks can't be everything, which they're not. But I think that if he was stimulated by her, then we wouldn't have even this conversation. I don't think they're matched well. I don't have high hopes for them. I think they'll get along. They might move a little bit further. And if they do, that's great, because I'm a hopeful romantic, and I love to see when it does work out, even though the ratio for this experiment is low. But I'm excited when it works out. But right now, based on what I'm seeing, realistically, it doesn't feel like it's going to work out. They don't seem like the couple that will surprise me, but we'll see. And this is a great time to segue to the couple that is surprising me, Katie and Derek. So you guys know I was not about Katie girl, because she really pissed me off with the whole ex thing and just her straddling the fence 5 seconds before. But I love her and Derek together. I think they're so cute. I'm just going to take it for what it is right now. I don't watch the previews like I always say, so I don't know what's coming next week or later on in the season. But I love seeing them together. They seem the most chill, the most compatible. They seem the most organic to me. Like, oh, they could have met, I don't want to say in real life, they met in real life, but they could have met in a more organic fashion. I loved like 150 million points for Derek just jumping in there with the with giving her diabetes shot. I think it was a test from her, to be honest, because let's be real, she's been doing it. Nobody's giving you your shot every day. We saw her in the little package that they did early on in the season, giving herself her shot. So when she asked for help, I think that was her way of gauging how he would respond, because she said that in the past some guys were not comfortable with it. He jumped right in. I love that he jumped right in, because that's a scary thing. I mean, I learned to do it for my grandmother years ago, and I broke out in a full sweat the first time. I mean, eventually it was like, oh, okay, whatever, I'm used to it. But if you're not accustomed to doing that, it is very difficult. And for him to just jump right in after having met her 3 days ago with no apprehension and no like, can I watch you do it first? Which would have been totally okay. Can I watch you do it first so that I don't mess it up, or I'm a little nervous? He was like, okay. And he did it. I love that he did it. And I think that shows his willingness. One of her concerns, which to me is like not really even a real concern, is that he's never been in love. He's young. So what? Like, to me, that's not a big deal. He's not 40. He's 26. Like, give him a break. Look how he's showing up. And he's even verbalized, like, I want to fall in love. Like, my goal is to have her fall in love with me. I think he's in it to win it, and not in a way where there's a goal at the end and it's like, let's meet this goal, without really wanting to go, like, far beyond that. But I really love seeing them together. They consummated their marriage, no surprise there. He is really sweet to her. She's really sweet. I know she's like on cloud 1,000, having made this decision and having stepped out of her comfort zone. And I think she's a great example for like whoever's watching, to do something different. Like, we all have had that back and forth with an ex or someone you feel like you love, but maybe you guys are not on the same timetable, or somebody who's been stringing you along, and they always, right when you're happy or right when you're about to move on, they show up. She's a great example of how like leaping you know, and hoping the net appears. Her net appeared, okay? And he's like 6'5", and he's caught her. And I think that she's really, really happy. So that's just a sidebar. If you're struggling, because I've been there too. If you're struggling, like, sometimes it's like, oh, dance with the devil, you know. But like on the flip side, you already know this, and you know what you're not getting. And if that's not enough, then maybe you want to like take a leap and be open to something else. Because if what you've had is not enough, then there's no point in giving it another try. You know, for most people, every now and then it does work out and things change and you guys get on the same frequency, but you know, get off the roller coaster. There might be a better ride for you. All right, so that is Katie and Derek. Next we have Jessica and Austin. Jessica and Austin too consummated their marriage. They seem sweet as well. They, like I told you, they're very they're like the corny couple. They joke around a lot. They laugh a lot. They even mentioned last night how they had 1 hour where they weren't like doing jokes and kind of doing that thing that I think they do to get comfortable and to avoid being uncomfortable. And I'm glad that they said it, because I'm glad that they know that that's like their thing, which can make for a great couple, but then can also be a distraction to things that they really need to discuss. So I'm glad that they are like aware of that, but they're still having fun. She told the girls, listen, he's like, he checked every box, and she's really happy and they're comfortable with each other. And he's really happy too. And one thing I like that he really said was when he was sitting with the guys, he was like, you know, I felt like I could be myself immediately. Like I didn't have to force it or have to be someone else. And I thought that that was so great, because we all know what that first date is, or the first few dates. You know, you laugh softer, you eat lighter, you act interested in hearing about aliens. That's what I did with my husband. Oh, okay. I didn't care, but but I did, you know. It's like when you can immediately just go into like being your dorky self or corny self or whatever, it's good. And under the circumstances, I would not feel a way if they kind of kept that part of themselves a little bit reserved as they got to know someone they met 5 seconds ago. So, yeah, that's pretty much it. I like them though. I think Jessica and Austin and Katie and Derek, they are like coasting right now. And I know we're still on the honeymoon, so we just started. But so far, so good. It's good to see them, because honestly, a few episodes ago, I was like, I don't even know what I'm watching. Like, I don't know if I can even make it through this season. So at least they're providing content where I'm like, okay, I could see this going the distance if it continues to, you know, matriculate in a healthy way. So that's Jessica and Austin. Last but not least, we have Taylor and Brandon. Taylor and Brandon was a tough episode for them yesterday. Basically, if you guys didn't watch, Taylor was up before Brandon, and she had their little mini cam kind of like filming him snoring, and he got up and he shut down the whole day. Didn't talk to her until that night. He was really upset. She didn't really know why. She was trying to talk to him, trying to be fun and playful. He ignored her. He was really, really rude. He was really, really childish. And towards the end of the night, when they had dinner, he basically says that he had a panic attack and he didn't know how to deal with it, and he shut down. So when she asked, you know, what was the panic attack about, it was because she had the camera in his face, the little mini cam that they're given to film each other on the honeymoon, on top of all the cameras that are in his face because you're on a show. Listen, I don't have the patience for Brandon. First of all, if you guys remember, like a couple of reviews ago, I said I feel like he has a temper. I feel like I saw that last night. He kept that temper at bay, not to look like a Looney Tune, but he really does have a temper. He has zero coping skills. She was basically saying, like, you know, how would I have known that you had an anxiety attack? And he was just like, you didn't see me shaking, and you didn't see all of these things. All of these things that, based on what we saw, did not really happen. I watched it again. And I will say that the second time I saw, when he woke up, he looked stunned, like a little scary stunned, so I'll give him that. But the panic attack does not last the entire day, okay? Take it from a therapist who deals with people who have anxiety and panic attacks and all types of stuff. It does not last the entire day. You don't shut down like that. That is only indicative of awful coping skills. And he talked that night saying, you know, he's been by himself this whole time, and he doesn't know how to deal with it. He didn't know how to talk to her. He didn't know how to respond. Basically, pushing all of the accountability on her. Like, it's because of you that I couldn't really share how I felt, when it was something that was so simple. This is so indicative of like deeper rooted issues. Here's why Brandon had to get on this show, because he doesn't know how to really deal with anyone, and he doesn't know how to communicate effectively enough to where if he's having an attack that he would be able to verbalize, or because sometimes during a panic attack you can't talk, or he can create some sort of coping skills that can help him, you know, decrease what he's experiencing, and then over time be able to communicate, this is what's going on with me. It doesn't last 24 hours where you act like a douche. You don't tell your wife not to touch your stuff. You don't have a beer in the pool. Like the panic attack is not lasting through the beer in the pool, drinking the same beer that your wife offered you, but you didn't want it from her, and she doesn't know you, and you're ignoring her, and you guys go hang out with other people, but you don't want to have lunch with her. That was such crap to me, and it was very, very childlike, very immature. I said some colorful words. So did my husband, because he was so upset. And it just was so uncalled for the way he treated her. And there's no excuse for it. I love that Taylor really set boundaries, though. I love during their dinner that she was like, you're not going to talk to me like that. I love that she did that, because Taylor comes off a little like airy, you know, and a little like, oh, she's a little like, I up until last night, I really didn't take her too seriously, because I just keep getting this very airy, light, boppity, not much going on, even though she's a research scientist. But like she doesn't give you depth. She has not given us depth yet. It's like a lot of light, funny giggles. But I love that she like threw the hammer down and said, you're not going to talk to me like that. And she was really irritated, and she exhibited a lot of patience, which sometimes you need to do for your spouse, especially if you know they're in a certain state. Like, since I've gotten pregnant, my husband has had more patience with me. I try to keep the prego hormones at bay, you know, but sometimes when I'm like ranting about something that is just like not really that big of a deal, he just ignores me, because he knows this is just what it is right now. And that's probably best, because sometimes I'll look back and I'll be like, oh my God, that wasn't even that significant. But in that moment, it feels significant. You know, there are times where you have to have patience with your spouse, and vice versa. I do the same for him. But this is not one of those times, unless he's in a true panic attack mode, it's not one of those times where you allow this person to exhibit bad behavior based on something that is significant and tie it in to validate why he or she gets to act poorly. So I'm glad that he says that, because I'm glad that she says that, because he's like, you know, I said, I'm sorry, like, get over it. These apologies weren't even that significant. It was like, I'm sorry. The first I'm sorry was like, I'm sorry. And then he said it a few times. He's like, I said I'm sorry a million times. No. So I'm so glad that she called him to the carpet. I really am, because it's just inappropriate. And she basically says, you know, next time this happens, talk to me. And I mean, they're new. I would have thought that they're new, so I think she did a great job, but I would have like really wanted her to say, okay, so the next time you're having an anxiety attack, let's talk about it. Like, what does that look like? When you're about to have one, do you know? Because some people can feel like that building, and they can feel their triggers. They know what their triggers are to an anxiety attack. Or sometimes it's sudden, sometimes it's not. Let's talk about that, because if I'm your wife, I need to know that. Let's talk about how you've dealt with it in the past. We've talked about how you're not going to deal with it again, but what are you going to do to replace that? These are why coping tools are so important. How can I help you so that you don't lash out on me? How much time do you need after you feel the effects of this before I can like address you? Because it's okay to give your spouse time. Like, if your spouse needs a break, like if they come home from work and they're like, I just need 30 minutes, like, like, I'm a therapist, so I deal with heavy content all day long. Like, my husband had to learn, like, the moment I walk in the door, like, I need a break. Like, therapist hat off. I don't want to hear about, if it's heavy, I'm out of here. Like, he had to learn, and that's okay. It's not shutting your spouse out. It's learning to navigate people. So for him, what do I need to do? Or for him, what do I need to do? How much time do you need? Do you need time? I wish they would have dove into that a little bit, because the way that he responded, she really didn't deserve that. And it lasted so long. And the conversation to me did not really address as much as I wanted it to, so that it doesn't happen again, because she doesn't deserve that. No one does, So that is Taylor and Brandon. I don't have high hopes for Taylor and Brandon too. I think that people want to have high hopes for them, and they look cute together. But it's just a vibe from Brandon that I'm not really feeling. I don't know Taylor yet, but if I had to pick, based on what I'm seeing so far, if I had to pick the one who's a little more problematic, I would pick Brandon, because Taylor to me just has more of a genuine spirit, and she seems like she is trying more, and that's just how she is. And Brandon to me has more of like a darker energy about him, and that is probably what's gotten in the way of past relationships being successful. So anyways, let me know what you guys thought. That is my review for this week. Don't forget to subscribe, comment, and like, and I will see you guys next week. Everyone have a great weekend.